Jake Morrison sat in his chair and tried not to show his anger. The big meeting room was full of aliens from different worlds. They were all talking and laughing at the humans again. Jake had been Earth's main speaker for 3 years now. 3 long years of being treated like a child. The Zephyrian delegate made a clicking sound with his mouth. His translator box turned the clicks into words that Jake could understand. The humans think they can help us with space battles? Maybe they should learn to fly their ships better first. All the other aliens laughed. Their different sounds mixed together in the huge room. Some clicked, some buzzed, and some made noises Jake had never heard before, but they were all laughing at the same thing. At him, at Earth, at all humans. Lisa Hayes sat next to Jake. She was a captain in Earth's Space Navy. Lisa had fought in real battles against space pirates. She had saved thousands of lives. But these aliens acted like she was just a little girl playing with toys. Jake looked down at his papers. On top was Earth's newest idea for keeping everyone safe. Pirates were attacking more ships every month. People were dying. Earth wanted all the different worlds to work together to stop the pirates. It was a good plan. Jake knew it would work, but the aliens did not care. The Manthari delegate spoke next. He looked like a giant bug with too many arms. Why should we listen to these new creatures? They have only been in space for 50 years. We have been flying between stars for thousands of years. More laughter filled the room. Jake remembered his first day here. He had been so excited to meet aliens. He thought they would be wise and friendly. Earth had dreamed of joining the galactic family for so long. But the aliens were not wise or friendly. They were mean and selfish. The Andromedan spoke up. She was tall and blue with big black eyes. The humans are too young to understand real problems. Let them play with their small ships in their small part of space. Lisa's hand moved to her weapon. Jake put his hand on her arm to stop her. Fighting would not help. It would only make things worse. For 3 years, Jake had tried everything. He had been polite. He had been patient. He had brought gifts from Earth. He had shared human music and art and food. Nothing worked. The aliens still treated humans like pets. Earth had sent their best people to this council, scientists who could cure diseases that had killed millions, engineers who could build better spaceships, soldiers who could protect innocent people from pirates. But the aliens did not want human help. They just wanted to feel better than someone else. The big alien in charge hit his desk with a hammer-like tool. His name was Qualthor, and he led the whole council. "We will vote on the human plan now," he said in his deep voice. Jake already knew how the vote would go. It was always the same. The aliens would say no to whatever humans suggested. Then they would laugh and talk about how stupid humans were. One by one, the aliens voted. No, no, no. Every single alien said no to Earth's plan to stop the pirates. They did not care that innocent people would die. They did not care that trade ships would be destroyed. They only cared about making humans look bad. When the voting ended, Qualthor looked at Jake with his 4 red eyes. The council says no to the human plan. Maybe humans should focus on learning basic things before trying to help their betters. More laughter. Always more laughter. Jake stood up slowly. He was not a tall man, but he felt very tall in that moment. The whole room became quiet. All the aliens stared at him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake said in a clear, strong voice, "Earth hereby withdraws from all negotiations with this council. We will no longer participate in any council meetings or activities." The room exploded with noise. Aliens jumped up from their seats. They shouted in their different languages. Some seemed angry. Others seemed confused. A few seemed scared. But Jake was not done talking. "Furthermore," he continued, "all human ships, workers, and equipment will be recalled from council space immediately. Any agreements between Earth and council worlds are now ended." Jake picked up his papers and put them in his bag. Lisa stood up next to him. Behind them, all the other humans began to leave their seats. The Andromedan delegate stood. "Harisa, you cannot do this, you need us." Jake smiled for the first time in months. "No, he said quietly. "We really don't." He walked toward the door. Lisa walked beside him. Behind them came all the human diplomats, soldiers, scientists, and workers. They walked in perfect rows, like soldiers marching to war. As they reached the door, aliens began shouting questions. "Where are you going? What about the trade deals? Who will fix our machines?" Jake did not answer. He just kept walking. In the hallway, Lisa asked, "Do you think they will try to stop us?" Jake shook his head. "They still don't understand what they're losing." They reached their ship. Jake pressed a button on his communication device. "Admiral Price, this is Jake Morrison. Operation Homecoming starts now. Bring everyone home." The response came immediately. "Understood, sir. All human ships are being recalled. All human workers are being evacuated. All human equipment is being shut down." Jake looked back at the council building one last time. The aliens were still inside, probably still laughing. They would not be laughing for long. Earth had tried to be a good friend to the galaxy. The galaxy had chosen to be a bad friend to Earth. Now Earth would find out what it was like to be alone. The human ship lifted off into space, carrying Jake and his team away from the council world forever. Behind them, the aliens continued their meeting, not knowing that their entire way of life was about to change. 6 months after the humans left, the first major disaster struck the Galactic Council. A large fleet of space pirates attacked 3 different shipping lanes at the same time. They destroyed dozens of trade ships and stole millions of credits worth of goods. In the past, this would never have happened. The USS Independence and other human patrol ships would have detected the pirate fleet long before it could attack. Human early warning systems would have alerted everyone to the danger. Human rapid response teams would have stopped the pirates before they could hurt anyone. But now the human ships were gone. Captain Ben Williams sat in his new office on Earth's orbital defense station. He was reading reports about the pirate attacks with mixed feelings. Part of him wanted to help the innocent people who had been hurt, but another part of him remembered how the aliens had laughed at human security proposals. "Sir," his aide said, "the Manthari Trade Union is requesting immediate military assistance. They're offering to pay us." Ben smiled coldly. "Tell them we're too busy protecting human space. Maybe they should ask their superior alien technology for help." The Manthari had always claimed their ships were better than human vessels. They said human weapons were weak and human tactics were stupid. Now they were begging for help from those same weak humans. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting to discuss the pirate problem. Council Chairman Qualthor looked around the meeting room with his 4 red eyes. Many seats were empty. Several alien species had stopped coming to council meetings because they were too busy dealing with problems in their own space. "The pirate attacks are becoming catastrophic," announced Trade Prince Zeklon of the Manthari. "Our shipping losses have increased by 3,000%. We need immediate action." Councillor Vexithari stood up slowly. His blue skin looked pale and tired. "The human patrol vessels are gone. All of them. We have no coverage in 70% of our space." The room became very quiet. For the first time, the aliens were beginning to understand what they had lost. Humans had provided most of the security for the entire galaxy. They had patrolled vast areas of space with their fast, well-armed ships. They had kept pirates and other criminals from terrorizing honest people. Now that protection was gone. On the industrial world of New Geneva, the medical crisis was getting worse every day. Dr. Amy Foster had finished shutting down the last human pharmaceutical factory. The production lines that had made life-saving medicines for billions of aliens were now silent and empty. "The hospitals are reporting critical shortages," Amy's assistant told her as they prepared to leave the planet. "Some species are facing extinction if they don't get the medicine soon." Amy felt sad about the innocent people who would suffer. But she also remembered how alien doctors had always dismissed human medical research. They had called human medicine primitive and unscientific. They had refused to share their own research with human scientists. "They have their own superior medical knowledge," Amy said as she locked the factory doors. "I'm sure they'll figure something out." But the aliens were not figuring anything out. Their superior medical technology could not replace what humans had been providing. Human medicines were not just simple drugs. They were complex formulations that required advanced chemistry and precise manufacturing techniques. Without human factories, aliens could not make the medicines they needed. Without human research, they did not know the formulas for making new drugs. Hospitals across the galaxy began running out of basic supplies like painkillers and antibiotics. The situation became even worse when surgical equipment started breaking down. Human engineers had designed most of the medical devices used in alien hospitals. They had also trained the technicians who maintained those devices. Now the equipment was failing, and there was no one to fix it. Dr. Patricia Hall had been the chief medical technology coordinator for the Council Worlds. She had spent years teaching alien technicians how to maintain complex surgical robots and life support systems. But most aliens had been too proud to pay attention during training sessions. Humans will always be here to fix things, they had said. We don't need to learn their simple technology. Now Patricia was gone, and the simple technology was breaking down everywhere. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the Vorthan Confederation was discovering how difficult it was to extract rare metals without human workers. The deep mines were extremely dangerous. Toxic gases could kill anyone who made a mistake. Cave-ins happened without warning. The equipment was complex and required constant maintenance. Humans had been willing to work in these deadly conditions because they needed the money and resources. They had developed safety procedures that kept casualties low. They had trained skilled miners who knew how to handle emergencies. But the Vorthans had always treated human miners like expendable slaves. They had given humans the worst jobs and the smallest share of the profits. They had refused to provide proper safety equipment or medical care. Now the mines were sealed shut. The rare metals that powered starships and industrial equipment were becoming impossible to get. Without these materials, the aliens could not build new technology or maintain their existing machines. The quantum communication network was failing faster than anyone expected. Helen Scott had tried to warn alien officials that the system needed constant maintenance. She had begged them to let her train replacement technicians, but they had always said they would figure it out later. Now it was too late. Worlds were losing contact with each other every day. Some planets had not received any messages for weeks. The instant communication that had held the galactic community together was breaking down completely. Without communication, trade became almost impossible. Ships did not know where to deliver their goods. Buyers could not contact sellers. Banks could not process transactions between different worlds. The galactic economy began to collapse. Admiral Janet Price sat in her office on Earth and reviewed the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. Every day brought news of new failures in alien space. The species that had called humans primitive newcomers were learning what life was like without human help. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we're receiving hundreds of requests for assistance every day. The aliens are offering to pay premium prices for human services." Admiral Price leaned back in her chair. For years, humans had provided security, technology, and expertise to the galactic community for almost nothing in return. They had been treated like junior partners in their own galaxy. "Log all the requests," she said calmly. "We'll consider them when we have time. After we take care of human needs first." The aliens were finally learning to say, "Please." But it might be too late. Colonel Steve Martinez commanded the defense forces around Earth's solar system. He watched as another alien delegation requested permission to enter human space. They had been waiting for 3 days for an answer. In the old days, human diplomats had sometimes waited weeks for permission to meet with alien officials. The aliens had enjoyed making humans wait. It had made them feel important and superior. Now, the tables were turned. "Sir," asked one of his officers, "should we let them through?" Colonel Martinez looked at the alien ships on his screens. They looked small and vulnerable compared to the human defense platforms surrounding them. "Let them. Wait," he said. "Good things come to those who wait. Isn't that what they always told us?" 3 months had passed since the humans left the council meeting. At first, most aliens did not notice anything different. They went about their daily lives, flying their ships and trading their goods. But slowly, things began to change. Vex Thari was an important alien from the Andromedan Coalition. His job was to watch what happened in different parts of space. He sat in his office looking at reports that confused him. Human ships were disappearing from the major space routes. The busy shipping lanes that connected different worlds were becoming empty of human vessels. For years, human trade ships had carried goods all over the galaxy. They were always on time and their prices were fair. Other alien traders charged much more money and were often late. But humans were different. They kept their promises and worked hard. Now those ships were gone. Dr. Alan Carter worked at a human research station far from Earth. His job was to study alien plants and animals to find new medicines. For 3 years he had worked with alien scientists. Together they had found cures for diseases that killed millions of people every year. But the alien scientists never treated Alan as an equal. They acted like human science was simple and childish. They took credit for discoveries that Alan had made. They used human research without saying thank you. Now Alan was packing up his laboratory. He carefully put all his research data into special storage boxes. Every cure, every formula, every important discovery was being taken away. "It seems wrong to leave all this work," said Rachel Kim, who helped Alan with his research. Alan shook his head as he sealed another box. "We're not leaving it. We're taking it where people will appreciate it. Back to human space." The aliens did not know that humans were taking their research with them. They thought the knowledge would stay behind, for them to use. They were wrong. On a mining planet called Kepler 442b, Tony Rodriguez supervised the destruction of humanity's biggest mining operation. The aliens who owned the planet had made humans work in the most dangerous mines. They said humans could keep 30% of what they found. The aliens kept the other 70% and did none of the dangerous work. Tony watched as explosives destroyed the mine entrances. The aliens would never find another species willing to work in such deadly conditions. The rare metals that powered their spaceships would become much harder to get. "Are you sure about this?" asked one of Tony's workers. Tony smiled grimly. "Let them dig their own holes." Back on the main council world, something very important was breaking down. The quantum communications array was the system that let different worlds talk to each other instantly across vast distances. It was like a telephone system for the entire galaxy. The problem was that only humans knew how to fix it. Helen Scott had been in charge of the communication system for 5 years. She had tried to teach alien technicians how to maintain the complex equipment, but most aliens were too proud to learn from humans. They said their own technology was better. Now Helen was shutting down the system permanently. She stood in the control room and watched the lights go out one by one. Each light represented communication with a different world. As the lights died, those worlds lost contact with the rest of the galaxy. "The aliens will panic when they realize what's happening," said one of Helen's assistants. Helen pressed the final shutdown button. "That's their problem now." The aliens had not realized how much they depended on human technology. Human engineers had built most of the important systems that kept galactic civilization running. Human technicians maintained the machines that made modern life possible. Human workers did the jobs that aliens considered too dangerous or too boring. Now all of that was ending. Captain Ben Williams had spent 5 years protecting alien shipping routes from pirates. His ship, the USS Independence, was the fastest and best-armed vessel in Sector 7. Pirates feared him and honest traders loved him. His early warning systems could detect trouble before it happened. Now Ben was flying his ship back to Earth. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 different merchant vessels. Pirates are attacking the main shipping lane." Ben looked at the tactical display. Without his ship patrolling the area, pirates were becoming very bold. They were attacking ships they would never have dared approach before. "Log the distress calls," Ben said calmly. "But we are no longer responsible for alien security. Let them handle their own problems." It was hard to ignore people calling for help. Ben had always been the kind of person who helped others. But the aliens had made it clear they did not want human help. Now they could see what life was like without it. On the industrial world of New Geneva, Dr. Amy Foster was supervising the removal of advanced manufacturing equipment. Humans had built factories that produced medicines, computer parts, and other high-tech goods for dozens of alien worlds. The aliens had always complained that human products were inferior to their own. They said human factories were primitive and inefficient, but they still bought human goods because they were cheap and reliable. Now those factories were being dismantled. "The medical shortage is going to be severe," warned Amy's assistant. Amy nodded as she watched another production line being shut down. Maybe they should have thought of that before treating us like servants. The aliens were about to learn that human manufacturing was not as primitive as they claimed. Human factories produced 60% of all the basic medicines used in council space. Without those medicines, people would start dying within weeks. Hospitals across the galaxy began running out of supplies. Alien doctors found that they could not synthesize the complex drugs they needed. The formulas were human trade secrets, and humans were no longer sharing them. Surgical equipment designed by human engineers began breaking down. There were no replacement parts because the factories that made them were gone. Life support systems failed because human technicians were no longer available to fix them. The aliens had thought humans were just workers who followed orders. They did not understand that humans were the brain and nervous system of galactic civilization. Without humans, everything was falling apart. Communication systems failed. Manufacturing stopped. Trade routes became dangerous. Medical supplies ran out. The basic services that kept billions of aliens alive and comfortable were disappearing. And in human space, Jake Morrison received regular reports about the chaos. He read each report carefully and filed it away. The aliens were learning a hard lesson about taking their friends for granted. "Sir," his assistant asked, "some alien worlds are asking for emergency assistance. Should we respond?" Jake looked out the window at Earth's blue sky and white clouds. Home had never looked so beautiful. "No," he said simply. "They made their choice. Now they can live with it." 1 year had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council meeting. Chairman Qualthor looked around the council chamber with his 4 red eyes. Half the seats were empty. Many alien species could no longer afford to send representatives to council meetings. They were too busy trying to keep their own civilizations from falling apart. Trade between worlds had dropped by 40%. Pirate attacks had increased by 3,000%. Medical supplies were critically short on 15 different worlds. The quantum communication network was failing across entire sectors of space. The galactic community was dying. Qualthor had called this emergency meeting to discuss the crisis, but he already knew what needed to be done. The council needed the humans to come back. The question was whether the humans would agree. Kevin Murphy was one of the few humans still willing to talk to alien governments. He had been a minor diplomat before the withdrawal. Now he was Earth's only official contact with the Galactic Council. He stood in the center of the council chamber, looking calm and confident. The chamber felt different than it had a year ago. Gone was the arrogant laughter that had once greeted human speakers. The aliens sat quietly in their seats, listening carefully to every word Kevin said. "The Galactic Council requests humanity's return to full diplomatic status," Qualthor announced. His voice sounded tired and defeated. "We are prepared to offer considerations for your return." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "What kind of considerations?" "Full voting rights in all council decisions, equal representation on all committees, a permanent seat on the Security Council." Kevin nodded slowly. These were exactly the same things that Jake Morrison had asked for 1 year ago. The same proposals that the aliens had rejected with mockery and laughter. "Interesting," Kevin replied. "These are the same proposals Ambassador Morrison made 3 years ago. Proposals that were rejected quite dramatically, if I remember correctly." The silence in the chamber was uncomfortable. Many of the aliens looked down at their desks, ashamed of how they had treated the humans. Finally, Councillor Vexathari spoke. His blue skin looked pale and sick. "We may have underestimated humanity's contributions to galactic stability." Back on Earth, Admiral Janet Price was reading the latest intelligence reports in her office. The news from alien space got worse every day. Entire star systems were losing contact with the outside galaxy. Hospitals were running out of basic medicines. Industrial production had nearly stopped on many worlds. The aliens were learning a hard lesson about interdependence. For decades, they had assumed that they were the advanced civilizations and humans were primitive newcomers. They had never realized how much their daily lives depended on human technology, human workers, and human protection. Admiral, her aide reported, alien shipping requests have increased by 400% this month. They're offering to pay premium rates for human escort vessels. Admiral Price smiled with satisfaction. The same aliens who had once refused to pay fair prices for human services were now desperate enough to pay almost anything. Tell them we're considering their requests very carefully, she said. Very, very carefully. Colonel Steve Martinez was in command of the Sol Defense Force, which protected Earth's solar system from any threats. He was watching another alien delegation arrive at the edge of human space. This was the 5th delegation this week. They all wanted the same thing: permission to meet with human officials. The aliens were learning what it felt like to wait. In the past, they had made human diplomats wait for days or weeks before granting them meetings. They had enjoyed showing humans how unimportant they were. Now human officials were making alien diplomats wait. Some delegations had been waiting for over a week for permission to enter the solar system. "Sir," asked his communications officer, "the Andromedan delegation is requesting an urgent meeting. They say their medical situation is critical." Colonel Martinez remembered how the Andromedans had always acted superior to humans. They had claimed their blue skin and large black eyes made them more evolved than primitive humans. "Tell them we're very busy," he replied. "Maybe we can fit them into our schedule next month." The medical crisis was getting worse every day. Dr. Patricia Hall read the reports from her office on Earth's orbital medical station. Alien hospitals were running out of everything they needed to keep patients alive. Many species faced extinction within months if they could not get human medicines. The aliens had always claimed their medical science was more advanced than human medicine. They had refused to learn from human doctors. They had dismissed human research as crude and unscientific. Now they were begging for human help. "Doctor," her assistant asked, "several alien worlds are offering huge payments for emergency medical supplies. Should we respond?" Patricia looked out the window at Earth's beautiful blue surface. She thought about all the times alien doctors had insulted her work and refused to share their own research. "We're not a charity," she said finally. "If they want our help, they can negotiate a proper contract, with proper compensation." The transportation crisis was equally severe. Without human ships providing security, space pirates controlled most of the major shipping routes. Merchants were afraid to travel between worlds. Trade goods sat in warehouses because no one could safely transport them. Captain Derek Thompson commanded one of Earth's patrol vessels. Before the withdrawal, his ship had protected alien traders from pirates across 3 different sectors. Now he patrolled human space exclusively, keeping Earth's colonies safe. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving 17 different requests for escort services. The aliens are offering to pay 10 times our normal rates." Captain Thompson smiled grimly. The same aliens who had once claimed they did not need human protection were now desperate for escort services. Pirates were destroying their ships and stealing their cargo because alien military vessels were too weak and too slow to stop them. "Log their requests," he said. "Let them know we'll consider proposals that include appropriate compensation." The technology crisis was perhaps the most devastating of all. Human engineers had designed and built most of the advanced systems that kept alien civilizations running. Power plants, water treatment facilities, atmospheric processors, and countless other vital systems were failing without human maintenance. The aliens had always insisted their technology was superior to human designs. They had refused to learn how human systems worked. Now those systems were breaking down and no one knew how to fix them. Dr. Amy Foster established the first New Terran research consortium in neutral space, far from both human and alien territory. Unlike the old arrangement, where human research was freely shared with ungrateful aliens, This new facility operated on strict business principles. Any alien species that wanted access to human research and technology would have to pay fair market prices. They would have to sign contracts that respected human intellectual property. They would have to treat human scientists as equals. "Doctor," her assistant asked, "do you think the aliens will agree to our terms?" Amy looked at the list of desperate requests for human assistance. Alien governments were offering enormous payments for access to human medicine, human technology, and human expertise. "They don't have much choice," she replied. "We're offering them survival. The question is whether they're ready to pay the fair price for it." 6 months after Kevin Murphy's meeting with the Galactic Council, Earth received an official message. The alien governments had spent months debating among themselves. Some species wanted to continue trying to solve their problems without human help. Others realized that their civilizations would collapse without human assistance. Finally, the pragmatic aliens had won the debate. The message was formal and respectful. It was very different from the arrogant communications that Earth had received in the past. The aliens were requesting humanity's return to galactic civilization, but this time, they were offering true partnership instead of second-class membership. Ambassador. Claire Johnson read the message carefully. She was Jake Morrison's replacement as Earth's chief diplomat. Unlike Morrison, she would not have to endure mockery and dismissal from alien representatives. The aliens had learned to treat human diplomats with respect. "Ma'am," her assistant asked, "what should our response be?" Claire smiled as she began drafting Earth's reply. The aliens had learned their lesson. Now it was time to see if they were ready to build a better galaxy together. "We'll tell them we're considering their proposal," she said, very, very carefully. 18 months had passed since the humans walked away from the Galactic Council. The alien civilizations faced a simple choice: adapt to a new reality, or watch everything they had built crumble into dust. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had not declared war. They had not even made threats. They had simply taken their knowledge, their technology, and their protection home with them. It was the most effective demonstration of power the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Claire Johnson walked into the council chamber for the first time since the human withdrawal. The room looked very different now. Gone were the arrogant smirks and dismissive laughter that had once greeted human speakers. The alien delegates sat quietly in their seats, listening carefully to every word she said. Many seats were empty. Several alien species had stopped participating in galactic politics altogether. Their governments were too busy trying to prevent their civilizations from collapsing completely. "Honorable delegates," Claire began, her voice clear and confident. "Humanity is prepared to discuss limited re-engagement with the galactic community." The aliens leaned forward in their seats. These words represented their only hope for survival. "However," Claire continued, "any future relationship must be based on mutual respect and fair compensation. The days of humanity serving as the galaxy's unpaid workforce are over." She outlined Earth's terms for returning to galactic civilization. The conditions were simple but non-negotiable. Humanity would provide security services but only through paid contracts with appropriate compensation. Medical supplies and advanced manufacturing would be available through fair trade agreements. Scientific research would be shared only with species who contributed meaningfully to joint projects. Chairman Qualthor listened to every word with his 4 red eyes focused intently on Claire. His once proud demeanor had been replaced by desperate humility. "These terms are acceptable," he said quickly. "When can humanity begin providing services again?" Claire smiled politely. "We'll start with small pilot programs and expand based on performance. Trust, as you know, must be earned." Captain Derek Thompson commanded the USS Endeavour, the first human vessel to return to alien space in over 18 months. His ship carried a modest cargo of medical supplies, enough to ease the crisis on 3 worlds, but only a fraction of what humanity had once provided freely. The difference was striking. In the past, human ships had delivered massive amounts of aid without asking for anything in return. Now every aspirin, every bandage, every dose of medicine came with a price tag attached. "Sir," His communications officer reported, "We're receiving priority hails from 17 different vessels requesting escort services through pirate-controlled space." Derek looked at the tactical display. The shipping lanes were crawling with pirates who had grown bold during humanity's absence. Merchant vessels moved in frightened clusters, hoping their numbers would provide some protection. "Log all escort requests," Derek ordered. "Inform them that we'll consider proposals that include appropriate security fees, fuel costs, and hazard pay." The aliens were learning that human protection had never been free. They had just been too arrogant to realize. They were getting it at a massive discount. Dr. Patricia Hall stood in the control room of the first new Terran medical research facility. Located in neutral space between human and alien territory, the facility operated under completely different rules than the old arrangement. In the past, human medical research had been shared freely with alien species. Human doctors had trained alien physicians without charge. Human pharmaceutical companies had sold life-saving medicines at cost, often losing money to help people who needed treatment. Now the facility operated like any other business. Alien species that wanted access to human medical knowledge had to pay market rates. They had to sign licensing agreements that respected human intellectual property. They had to treat human researchers as equal partners rather than subordinates. "Doctor," her assistant reported, "the Andromedan Coalition is requesting immediate access to our new cancer treatment protocols. They're offering substantial compensation." Patricia reviewed the request carefully. The Andromedans had once claimed that human medicine was primitive and unscientific. They had refused to share their own medical research with human doctors. Now their people were dying from diseases that human medicine could easily cure. "Schedule a meeting with their representatives," Patricia decided. "But make it clear that any agreement must include full reciprocal research sharing. No more one-way deals." The manufacturing crisis had taught aliens a harsh lesson about economic interdependence. Human factories had produced 60% of all basic industrial goods used in council space. When those factories shut down, alien civilizations lost access to everything from computer components to starship parts. Tony Rodriguez supervised the opening of the first new Terran manufacturing consortium facility. Unlike the old factories that had operated under exploitative alien contracts, this facility was entirely human-owned and operated. "The Manthari are requesting an emergency shipment of starship engines," his assistant reported. "They're offering to pay triple the standard market rate." Tony smiled as he reviewed the production schedule. The Manthari had once forced humans to work in dangerous conditions for minimal pay. They had claimed that human manufacturing was inferior to their own. "Advanced production methods. Put them on the waiting list," Tony decided. "Right after we fill the orders from species that have already signed fair trade agreements with us." The security situation had stabilized somewhat, but only in areas where alien governments were wealthy enough to hire human protection. Sections of space remained under pirate control because local governments could not afford proper security services. Colonel Steve Martinez reviewed the patrol schedules from his command center in the Sol system. Human vessels now protected only the shipping routes of species that had signed security contracts with Earth. Other areas were left to fend for themselves. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Vorthon Confederation is requesting emergency military assistance. Pirates have captured 3 of their mining worlds." Steve remembered how the Vorthons had treated human miners on Kepler 442b. They had forced humans to work in deadly conditions while keeping most of the profits for themselves. "Inform them that emergency military intervention is available," Steve replied. "At emergency rates, of course, payment in advance." The communication crisis continued to worsen in areas that could not afford human technical services. The quantum network that had once connected hundreds of worlds was now a patchwork of working and failed nodes. Helen Scott managed the new Terran Communications Consortium from her office on Luna. Human technicians were slowly repairing the Galactic Communication Network, but only for species that signed appropriate service contracts. The network coverage is now at about 30% of pre-withdrawal levels, her technical supervisor reported, but that 30% includes all the worlds that agreed to fair compensation for our services. Helen nodded with satisfaction. The remaining 70% consisted mainly of species that had refused to negotiate reasonable contracts with humanity. They would remain isolated until they changed their attitudes. The social changes were perhaps the most significant of all. Alien attitudes toward humans had undergone a complete transformation. Species that had once dismissed humans as primitive newcomers now competed desperately for human attention and assistance. Ambassador Claire Johnson received dozens of invitations every week to visit different alien worlds. Governments that had once made human diplomats wait for weeks now offered immediate audiences to any human representative. "Ma'am," her secretary reported, "the hegemony is requesting a state visit. They're offering full honors and cultural exchange programs." Claire remembered how the hegemony had once treated human culture as crude entertainment. They had mocked human art, music, and literature as the products of an underdeveloped civilization. "Schedule the visit for next month," Claire decided, "but make it clear that we expect reciprocal cultural respect. No more treating human achievements as curiosities." The economic transformation was equally dramatic. Human services now commanded premium prices throughout the galaxy. Species that had once taken human assistance for granted now bid against each other for access to human expertise. Dr. Amy Foster reviewed the quarterly reports from the New Terran Research Consortium. Revenue had increased by 400%, compared to the old arrangement where human research was shared freely. "Doctor," her financial advisor reported, "we're receiving requests for research partnerships from 43 different species. The total value of proposed contracts exceeds Earth's annual GDP." Amy smiled as she looked at the numbers. Every contract represented fair compensation for human knowledge and expertise. No more giving away humanity's greatest achievements for nothing in return. 6 months later, the Galactic Council made a formal proposal that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. They requested that humanity consider joining a reformed galactic government as a founding member with equal rights and responsibilities. The proposal included everything that Jake Morrison had originally requested: full voting rights, equal representation, and a permanent seat on the Security Council.